Aaron Cort, VP Operations at ClickUp. Aaron, great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Armando. Really, really excited to kick things off.
Yes, your hot take is the top 10 fuck-ups to avoid in building efficient marketing programs. Tell us more.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, excited to dive in. I'd like to be pretty blunt with how I explain things. So while I would call these fuck-ups, most people would just have to learn these things on their own. I like to call them fuck-ups because that helps me mentally register what not to do in the future. So that's a quick take on it. But, quick take on me. UK, if I dive right in, Armando?
Yes. Sorry, I was off.
You're good. So quick take on me. I'm the VP of Ops at ClickUp. I was the 20th employee and the first head of marketing. We were bootstrapped originally to about 4 million in ARR and grew to 100 million ARR in about 2 years. So got to experience a lot. My big call outs that I really learned from building a marketing program from scratch at every stage of company. This is pre-revenue companies up through IPO. Strategy, content, community, and data are the most important facets. Strategy being essential for growth. You need to know where you're going and why. Content being organic, fueling everything in terms of efficiency and long-term sustainability. Community fueling expansion and net revenue retention. This has to do with how you're talking with people in your community, customers, users, everything in between. And then data infrastructure being everything. When I say everything, I really mean it. Having strong data infrastructure will help you predict and understand every aspect of the business. So I've narrowed down the top 10 hot takes to avoid no matter what around all of these areas when you're building an efficient marketing program. The key word here is efficient. Efficiency is all that matters right now in today's market conditions. And the first 4 points I just mentioned are kind of the broader categories in which we'll dive into each of the hot takes. Strategy, we'll talk about a few areas here. The first thing to avoid is not having a formal forecast or growth plan. Now, should you be completely married to a financial model at every stage of your growth? Not necessarily, but you should have something scoped out that weights out every aspect of the business in terms of what's driving growth. So this leads to having a KPI-based marketing strategy for predictable and efficient growth. This is understanding what measures, what metrics are actually going to drive things forward, and what does marketing actually have control of. Keyword is control. Where can we influence things? Where can we drive the business? And bottoms-up companies like ClickUp in the software as a service space, that is pretty straightforward. It's people signing up, using the product. Other businesses are different. But having a formal forecast and growth plan is foundationally important. The other thing to avoid on the strategy side is hyper-focus on lagging indicators. What are lagging indicators? That is revenue. That is the end result of what happens in the day-to-day of the business. The thing to focus on when you're a marketing team especially are the leading indicators. This is website visits, signups, activations, and conversions. These are the things that drive revenue, that create the end result. And you need to focus on those as a hyper-focused asset as opposed to hyper-focusing on the end result, which doesn't lead to control. Again, I'll keep going back to the main thing of control, because when marketing teams focus on things they can't control, they look like they suck. And to not look like you suck, focus on things that you actually have control of, and that being the leading indicators. On the content side, organic insights not driving performance. Avoid this. What does that mean? Use organic to drive what is happening for strategy in the business. And when you're having organic working, this is assuming you have a baseline or you have some aspect of organic where people are talking about you, content is driving some area of the business. You need to use that to drive growth and performance. When you're doing performance marketing, you need to be using organic insights to influence that behavior. When you're doing other aspects of the business, as it relates to hiring, as it relates to who your customers are, ICP creation, organic needs to be driving that, because that is what people are organically doing on their own without you having to tell them to do it, to basically get to your product and get to your business. And ultimately, you'll see down there finding a way to pay or use your product. On the content side as well, you don't want to scale paid before organic is scalable. What does this mean? You need to have traffic consistently and predictably growing from content or word of mouth sources before you make any significant investments in paid. Paid can be good for learning things quickly before organic is scalable. But ultimately, if basically your organic engine is not actively working, you are not going to be able to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to grow the business predictably on the paid side if organic isn't already doing that. And there's a lot of ways to do this, but I'll save that for Q&A. Leaky content production process. So if you have a content production engine or any aspect of organic that's working for the business, there's typically a production process involved. This relates to publishing and especially resource management. It basically equates on the resource side to time spent, time allocation, quality management, time to rank, design, quality consistency, you name it. If any bit of this process is leaky, you will not be able to scale organic. If you notice that you don't have answers to how long something takes to get published or how much time someone is spending on basically working on a particular asset, article, ebook, and then the quality as well, time to rank or the design consistency, or if you're using like an ebook, for example, driving leads, any aspect of that process that is leaky, either as in you don't understand what is driving it or what is going into it, or ultimately you don't understand the measures that influence the result of it, that is a problem. Community, weighting key user and customer personas, engaging where they care and find easiest to engage with you. Now, if you're not engaging directly one-to-one with users, literally having conversations with your customers, that is a problem. You need to be talking to people one-to-one. You can't rely on aggregated form feedback. You can't rely on aggregated systems of generating feedback and results. You need to actually have a real relationship with your users and customers. And ultimately, this varies, but you can do this on a number of different channels and a number of different ways. Can definitely talk about some of the specific examples of this in Q&A, but that's the first thing on the community side. Again, remember, community influences net revenue, retention, and expansion. This is how you're talking with customers. The other side of community is if you're shipping updates slowly or irregularly, that is a problem because your users will not be able to trust you. You need to be able to build trust with your customers and your users at every stage of the journey. Consistency and predictability allows people to trust you, recommend you, and ultimately want to pay for using your product or use it long term. And that is the biggest part of community outside of what I had mentioned on the prior slide. Another aspect of community, and notice we have a few points for this, is not having formal ICP, ideal customer persona archetypes or definitions. If you are trying to build community and you do not know who your users and customers are, what they care about, and what they need in order to effectively use your product or find you, then this is a problem because you do not know who you're talking to. If you have to learn who you're talking to in the midst of basically engaging and creating a relationship with them, that's a problem because you are 2 steps behind them. You need to be ahead of your customers in terms of this process by also knowing who they are, what they want to an extent, and getting their feedback throughout the process.